Sup, bitches?
You are watching Fugitive Red Eye, and welcome to Tales from the Drive-Thru. As many of you may know, if you've seen a lot of my other older videos, I used to work at McDonald's. I was there for about 3 years before I ended up quitting there. And in my 3 years working at McDonald's, a lot of interesting things happened. That's what this series is dedicated to, is the most entertaining things that happened when I was at on the job at McDonald's. I got away with fucking murder there. Like, honestly, people got in trouble there for stuff that I did. But we'll get to that in a later episode. This episode, we're going to be talking about one of my personal least favorite customers, the Smoky Juicy guy. The Smoky Juicy guy was, well, let me give you a little background. During my years at McDonald's, for a while I used to work the night shift. And on the night shift, we would meet all sorts of interesting people. There was this one manager who would usually work the night shift who was really anal about everything, and he seemed super stressed out, and I honestly think maybe a little depressed. For all intents and purposes, we'll call him Rimmer, because his personality really does match Rimmer from Red Dwarf, so... In fact, that was actually a nickname I called him sometimes when on the shift because he didn't get the reference, but regardless. One night on Rimmer's shift, I was there taking orders in the drive-thru like I'd usually done. And this guy comes through, right? He's like, "Hey, can I get a small fry and a smoky juicy?" I'm like, "That's not a thing." And he's like, "Yeah, you know, your $2 burger." I'm like, "We don't have anything called the smoky juicy." "Oh yeah, you know the one with the $2 and it's like bacon on it." I'm like, "Oh, you mean the Bacon McDouble?" Now, this is where the story gets a bit interesting. Instead of just being like, "Oh yeah, that's what I meant, cool," you know, just any normal reaction a person would have, instead you get, "Oh, you little bitch, I'm gonna come in there and slap the shit out of you, I'll fuck you up, fuck you, bitch." So, he drives out of the drive-thru, pulls around up front. Now, the funny thing is Rimmer goes up to talk to the guy. Okay, so... little does that guy know, Rimmer's not the one who took his order. He thinks it's the guy. So Rimmer walks up and the guy's like, "What, you think you're fucking better than me? You work at fucking McDonald's, you $5 piece of trash. I work at Smith's, I'm better than you." And I'm thinking to myself, how does working at Smith's elevate you in society above someone who works at McDonald's? Granted, I'm not saying, you know, the job defines the person, but Smith's isn't really a high-end job either. Anyway, so... he goes up, and Rimmer's talking to him for a second. All of a sudden, he spits in Rimmer's face, and Rimmer's like, "Okay, well, that's it. I'm calling the cops now." So he goes over, and he picks up the phone. The guy fucking books it out of there. He's like, "I'm gonna come back with, like, 12 of my homies, and we're gonna fuck you up." And this guy's clearly, like, drunk or stoned or something like that. We're not entirely sure. And he fucking books it out of there. Cops show up. I have to fill out a witness statement, of course, and Rimmer fills out a witness statement. And he got spit in the face for... this guy getting all pissy because we didn't have a non-existent sandwich that he was asking for. Granted, that's not the end of it. A little bit later down the road, I actually went out and took a look at the drive-thru menu. Now, the Bacon McDouble had this description on it that said smoky and juicy. But smoky and juicy were actually bigger than the name Bacon McDouble. So, I could see where the guy was getting confused. At the same time, his reaction was nowhere near natural. I just think it's fucking stupid that McDonald's would put smoky and juicy bigger than the name of the actual fucking sandwich. During the time we had the barbecue ranch burger, it also said bold and crunchy, and people would ask for a bold and crunchy, and since then, I knew what it meant, because, frankly, I didn't want to repeat of the smoky juicy guy, because I didn't want to be the one who got spit in the face. And, the funny thing is I told Rimmer, "Well, you know, why didn't you just punch him? You know, you were perfectly justified, you know, shit like that, right?" But he's like, "Oh, I would have if he would have stayed around. You know, I tell you what, I would have fucked him up." But no, he obviously wouldn't have. Rimmer was a fucking pussy. But yeah, that's pretty much the story of the Smoky Juicy guy. There's plenty more tales from the drive-thru to come. McDonald's had a lot of interesting things happen, especially working the night shift, and there was even a brief time Dozer Mac worked there with me, so that'll be a whole episode too. But that being said, this has been Fugitive Red Eye and Tales from the Drive-Thru. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button, and if you really enjoyed it, subscribe. If you don't like it, you can go to hell. And that being said, if you have any suggestions for future videos, just let me know in the comments, and you have a fantastic spadoinkle day. You are watching Fugitive Red Eye, and it's that time again for another exciting episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. The series where I talk about my exploits working in the fast food industry. Now, in the first episode, I briefly mentioned a manager I had, which I referred to as Rimmer. Now, Rimmer was an interesting guy. He was super OCD, and I honestly think he was a little depressed, and, probably a little bit, repressed. But, the things that I enjoyed the most about his shifts were messing around with him. Number one, he always had to have the sauces, like the dipping sauces for the chicken nuggets. He always had to have them stacked in a very particular order. And I would intentionally fuck with those to make it so that he would freak out, and he would always wonder who it was. I would also, every time it was his shift, I'd go into the manager's office and I'd type 666 on all the calculators. Eventually he figured it out because some other stupid coworker of mine, we'll get to him in a later episode, got caught doing it because, he was trying to be funny. But, anyway, Rimmer was, he was kind of interesting to work with. He was obviously the one who got spit in the face by the smoky juicy guy, but he was so much more than that. As much as it pains me to say it, to an extent I kind of miss working with him. Sure, I hated him. I didn't hate him. That's unfair. Sure, I hated things about him. He was super fucking, caring about his job. His job was the thing he cared about the most, and he intended to work in fast food for his entire life. And he was kind of a bit, arrogant. He was really arrogant, and he was always talking about, it's against the law, you gotta follow the law, follow company policy. And yet at the same time, he had a lenient side where I could show up I showed up an hour late on his shift once. And, no, it was 2 hours late. I showed up 2 hours late. And, because I was watching the Star Wars Holiday Special instead of going to work. Oh. I know, I'm a weird person. But anyway, I showed up 2 hours late, and Rimmer's like, "What's up, Angelo? How you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I'm late." He's like, "Oh, yeah. Well, it's okay." He didn't even question it. He fucking just let it go. And, true, there was one night where, this is the thing I hated the most about him, there was one night where this fucking guy came in, right? He ordered like $30 to $40 worth of food, okay? And, after that, he fucking asked for a couple of sauce packets, and, Rimmer goes up with the company policy being fucking shit about sauce. He goes up and, tells him, "I'm sorry, I can only give you one sauce." So, as soon as Rimmer walks away, me being the fucking rebel that I am, because, I'm such a fucking badass, I walk up, and I hand the guy, 3 fucking sauce packets. I'm like, "Here you go." And he's like, "Sir, you gotta pay for this, I'm gonna call the cops." Then he had me sign this fucking paper, because the guy ran out of there with the sauce, and, I felt good about it, because I think it's bullshit to charge, for a sauce packet when this guy orders, $30 to $40 worth of food. But, Rimmer, he walks up, and he tells me to sign this little paper, right? Well, no, first, let me back up a bit. He fucking shouts at me, right? He looks me in the eye, and he shouts, "Don't you ever fucking give out sauce like that again, you fucking hear me?" So, I go to the back, and for the rest of my shift, I sit on my ass and do nothing. And he doesn't have the balls to do shit. He just lets me sit there and do absolutely nothing while he has to man the drive-thru, the cash register, and the lobby, because me and him were the only two there on that night shift. Other than the grill people, of course. So then, after a while, I get ready to go home for my shift. I make a little sign, says, "Rimmer is a little bitch," and I hang it above the freezer, and I leave it there. And, I don't know if it got taken down, or if he left it up, or if he saw it, or what, but I just left it there when I left. And he made me sign this little paper. He's like, "It's not an official write-up, it's just to kind of document what happened. To kind of show, the boss what happened." The boss didn't say shit to me, nobody cared. What the hell was his problem? But then the other thing about Rimmer was, he also was always seeking everyone's approval. Not just, not just trying to abide company policy, but, sucking up to the employees and trying to gain our approval, acting like I was his best friend, even though, to be fair, I kind of treated him like shit, but you know what? I enjoyed every moment of it. But there was something else about him, something actually respectable. He did not take shit from the customers. He took shit from management all the time, which I'll get to in just a moment, but he did not take any shit from the customers. So, with the customers, he frequently told people never to come back. I remember one time, there was this lady who came through the drive-thru, this group of people, actually, a bunch of teenagers in a car, and they said, they were saying a bunch of stupid shit. I can't remember what all they were saying. So Rimmer gets on the headset, he's like, I kind of regret taking your order. And they left. But again, there's also that Weasley part of him, which I don't like. I mean, there was this guy smoking weed out in the drive-thru, which is illegal here, to be fair. But, he goes and he's like, I've already called the cops, you better get out of here. I mean, the guy was breaking the law, to be fair, and it was, within range of the drive-thru, so against smoking laws, too, but, regardless, I don't know, it felt like kind of a dick move, I think. Because, I'm no snitch. I mean, again, I don't break the law myself, but I'm no snitch. But anyway, that being said, fuck. But, then again, like I said, there was that respectable side, and lots of us joked about him, too. For instance, when, he was working, like I said, he seemed really depressed. Well, we would always joke and say, well, one day he's gonna come in and shoot the place up naked with a shotgun. And I would always say, and on that day, I'm not gonna stand in his way. And the thing is he seemed like the kind of guy that would snap, which, given the way he, transferred out of that location, I wouldn't put it past him. But then, he met this chick. This chick that was a manager at another McDonald's. And, he liked her. So much so that he actually got her pregnant. I didn't think the fucker had it in him. Proved my entire thing about him being a total, religious, person with no, ambition to, get the pussy. And that's not a knock at religious people or women, I'm just saying, I just didn't think he had it in him. I thought he was celibate. But then, after a while, I think he'd had enough of management, because they'd always have him cover every manager's shift whenever they didn't want it, and he couldn't say no, because, he was a good little boy. But, he worked a 24-hour shift once, which, I think is technically partially illegal. Don't quote me on that, but I'm not sure. But anyway, he, he always would do exactly what they told him to do, and even if he didn't want to, he'd fucking do it. And, he'd always bitch about it, and I'd tell him, Rimmer, why in the hell do you take this shit from them? He'd be like, well, one of these days I'm gonna get back. One of these days I'm gonna just tell them. I should have told them no, and you know what? One of these days I'm just not gonna take their shit anymore. Now, he had requested to be transferred multiple times, because to be fair, my store manager treated him like shit. So, he went over my manager's head eventually to get transferred. And she still wouldn't let him, because he went to a supervisor and shit. But, he was still denied transfer, so this is the best bit. He went up to my store manager and he told her, if you don't let me transfer, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna kill every single person here. Now that's a fucking bold statement to make with how crazy the world is these days, but he fucking did it. And for that, Rimmer, you will always have a special place in my heart, and I will miss you. This has been Tales from the Drive-Thru. I'm Fugitive Red-Eye, and I will see you for the next exciting tale from the Drive-Thru. You are watching Fugitive Red Eye, and it's time again for another Tales from the Drive-Thru. Tales from the Drive-Thru being the series where I talk about my exploits while working in the fast food industry, whether it be in the drive-thru actually or in the store itself. Now, if you remember the previous 2 episodes, I've talked about my manager, Rimmer. And if you remember from the last episode, I mentioned that he quit after threatening to kill everyone. Well, not quit, actually, I'm sorry, he got transferred. So with him being transferred, they need a replacement. So they get one from another McDonald's, which I think they honestly just took him because the other McDonald's didn't want him anymore because the way he acted. Let's call him Diego. Probably the most interesting manager I've had. Diego was very entertaining, to say the least. He was Rimmer's replacement and by far an upgrade, but still. Diego was the worst at customer service, the absolute worst, and that's what made me like him so much. He was a really bizarre guy. He was a Hispanic gentleman, probably in his late 50s, and I honestly think he did cocaine at work. Because about every hour on the hour, he'd be like, oh, I gotta go move my car, and then go out to his car, and he'd come back sniffing a bunch, like... And, he always seemed kind of out of it. He was really funny, though. I really liked working with him. He was super nice. And he enforced certain policies on, other employees. Like, he never enforced shit to me, other than he, well, yeah, he never fucking enforced shit to me. But, to the other employees, he was always super harsh, especially to new people. But my favorite things were, you know, anytime anything happened, he'd just insincerely be like, oh, so sorry, oh, so sorry. Like one time, this guy came through the drive-thru, and so he pulls up, right, and he's like, I'm like, go ahead and order whenever you're ready, and I hear this guy go, blah, blah. Like, I literally hear a noise like that, right, and I don't know what to do, I'm scared, so I just sit there for a second, and then, this guy, about literally 1 minute later, says, hello, is anyone there? I'm like, yeah, I'm here. He's like, well, I've been out here for 5 minutes, and I look at the timer, I'm like, actually, sir, I have a timer that tells me how long you've been out there, and you've been there for 1 minute. And he's like, can I talk to your manager? So I give Diego the headset, and he's like, oh, so sorry, sir, oh, so sorry, oh, so sorry, sir, oh, so sorry. And he goes on to cash out the order, just repeatedly saying, oh, so sorry, sir, oh, so sorry, oh, so sorry. Just over and over again, so insincerely. I remember another time there was this guy that came in ordered a shake, and his shake was really runny. So Diego goes up, and he's like, oh no, that's how it's supposed to be, which it turned out it wasn't, our machine was calibrated wrong. But the guy's like, well then I want a refund. He's like, oh, I can do nothing. That was another thing, he'd always be like, I can do nothing to customers. And he always treated customers like shit. Like, there was one time when a customer called in and talked to another manager to get their order replaced because it got fucked up. And the other manager had told them that they could come and get a replacement meal. So they show up on Diego's shift, and he's like, oh, I can do nothing. You know, he didn't fucking give it to him, which he technically was supposed to, and I believe he got in trouble for it, because he got many, many complaints. But he was an entertaining motherfucker. Like, he did some really bizarre shit. And I remember one time, he showed me this thing on his phone of these 2 people fucking in a back alley for some reason. And I'm like, okay. He's like, oh, it's funny, right? I was like, what the fuck, man? So, anyway, as time goes on, you know, I get used to him, his really bizarre attributes, and then this happens, the most interesting thing he's ever done. So, this lady comes through the drive-thru talking to the morning manager, who's this really sweet old lady, you know, you'd think of her like your grandma or your mom or an aunt, like a really sweet lady. So, this guy comes through the drive-thru, or this lady comes through the drive-thru, actually, and they order their food, and then the morning manager, we'll call her Cindy, says, will there be anything else? And then this bitch in the car is like, oh, your mom's dick. And then fucking Diego gets on the headset, he's like, what did you say? And he goes up to the back window to cash it out instead of me. And he's like, what did you say to my boss? You do that again, I cannot serve you. Okay, I cannot serve you. And He just literally said that, like he'll never serve them again if they act like that. He did not take shit from customers, just like Rimmer, only he was a lot more entertaining. And he tried to say that the reason he went out to his car so much was to smoke an e-cig, but he was clearly doing, as I was saying, he was clearly doing cocaine. Another thing he would do is anytime anyone would make a drink, like, you know, get a drink from the drive-thru and just kind of try and hide it up there near the drive-thru window, he would, like, put a bunch of salt and pepper in it to fuck with them. Particularly, there was this one girl that he liked to pick on. She was like 16 or something like that. He just liked to fuck with her a lot. Probably wanted her, if you know what I mean. He was a weird old man, so I wouldn't doubt it. But anyway, he was an interesting guy, and frankly, I'll never forget him. I actually went to the old McDonald's I worked at a few days ago, you know, on the way home from another place. And he was still there, so as far as we know, Diego ain't going anywhere. And he's still doing cocaine, I'm sure. Now he claimed, you know, I have kids, I can't do cocaine, it's bad. You know, shit like that. But he was a good guy, fun to work with, unless, of course, he didn't like you. In which case, he was a pain in the ass to work with. Luckily, everyone there liked me, even though I had a blatant disregard for company policy, but that's another story for a different day. Other than that, this has been Fugitive Red Eye, and this has been another exciting episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. I hope you've all enjoyed, and I hope I enjoyed, which I did. But, that being said... Oh, I said that being said. Damn it! Oh well. That... Again, other than that... if you want me to make a specific type of video, you have any requests, anything like that, let me know. Any requests for future videos. Obviously, there will be much more Tales from the Drive-Thru to come, so don't forget to tune in next time for Tales from the Drive-Thru. This has been a Fugitive Red Eye production of a Fugitive Red Eye show, directed by Fugitive Red Eye, starring Doom Guy. But anyway... I'll see you on the next Tales from the Drive-Thru. I think I've rambled on enough here. So, yeah. You have a spadoinkle day. You are watching Fugitive Red Eye, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. This is the series where I talk about my experiences working in the fast food industry. Today's episode, we will be talking about the snitch. Now, let me give a little backstory on this beforehand. So as I mentioned, working there in the drive-thru, I messed around a lot and did all sorts of things, and I never got in trouble for any of it.
That turret has us pinned. We can't advance.
Flank the watchtower!
One day, a new guy started working there. We'll call him Beavis. So Beavis started working there, and at first I didn't know what to think of him. He was quiet, and just kind of really, you know, seemed like another new guy, so, you know, I helped show him the ropes and whatnot, and I showed him how to get away with things and stuff and whatnot. And I wasn't sure exactly if he'd be fun to work with or what kind of guy he'd be.
Company!
Get the damn turret!
After he'd been there for a while, he started joining in with me, and we started messing with the customers together. You know, screwing with them when we take their orders, doing all sorts of shit like that, like, you know, saying shit like, welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger, you know, shit like that. Kind of childish, but, you know, it helped break up the monotony of the day. We put ketchup in the coffee dispenser once, just a packet of ketchup. It wasn't opened or anything, so it's not like we contaminated the coffee.
Another man down. I hate this goddamn war.
And, you know, we'd, screw around a lot, and, I don't know, it was fun. I thought he was my friend. Then one day, he carved a pentagram into the freezer in the back using a piece of metal he found. Just because, you know, fuck it. So in response, I carved an anarchy symbol and a couple other things into the same freezer. And, then he carved a huge-ass pirate flag. And then he hid it underneath the paper, and the paper fell down. And, our boss actually found the pirate flag and looked on the cameras and caught him in the act of carving it. Now, they never caught me because it was weeks after I'd done it. However, when I came back the next day, my boss asked me about it. She's like, what's this all about, you know? And at the time, I didn't know exactly what had happened. So and then I said, well, I don't know anything about it. And she's like, I've seen the cameras. Now, at the time, I didn't know that the cameras would erase after every 3 days, so, I thought there might have been a chance she'd seen me, so I fessed up, and I took the rep for the whole thing. I didn't fucking rat out Beavis. Then I come to find out, talking to another manager who was actually a friend of mine, she told me that he actually ratted me out. As soon as he got caught, he's like, oh, Angelo did it too. Like a little fucking rat. Now, the best part is the fact that he got fired for it. My boss only told me, if you do it again, there will be consequences. She didn't even specify consequences, but this motherfucker got fired. So it just goes to show that snitching doesn't prove shit, and frankly, you're not gonna make anything better for yourself by snitching on other people. Anyway, but he got fired, I got told do it again, there'll be consequences, and then he talked to me, he texted me one time, talking to me, asking, I don't remember what it was, but I'm like, dude, don't talk to me, you fucking ratted me out, and he's like, no, I didn't, she had you on camera, which of course wasn't true. But yeah, I guess that's about all really I have to say about this fucking snitch. He was fun to work with for a while. We kept talking about how we were going to hang out outside of work, but we never did. And, frankly, I'm kind of glad about it, because he was a fucking prick. That being said... fuck, I said that being said, but whatever. This has been a Fugitive Red Eye production, and, stay tuned, of course, for the next Tales from the Drive-Thru. Hopefully it'll be just as exciting, if you know what I mean. Sexually. But regardless, tune in again. And you have a spadoinkle day.
Don't let that damn turret fire one.
Fuck, that turret has us pinned. We can't advance.
Flank the watchtower.
You are watching Fugitive Red Eye, and it's damn near time for another Tales from the Drive-Thru, so here goes. Of course, Tales from the Drive-Thru is the series where I talk about my exploits working in the fast food industry. Today's episode is a little bit different. It has nothing to do with my personal experience in fast food, but it has to do with a friend of mine who worked in another McDonald's, not far from the one I worked at. Now, he worked there a lot less time than I did because of this reason. This story, he worked there and, you know, he did the night shift, and he was getting really tired and stressed out and pissed off, and he had this boss that was always riding his ass. We'll call the boss Stan, and we'll call my friend Machete. So anyway, I remember one day, Machete was bitching about his boss to me, and he was listening to this song, right? And he was telling me how it made him want to kick his boss's ass. And you know, he's like, one day I'm gonna put him in his place. And I remember him telling me all these other confrontations he'd had. You know, fucking this. There was this big family of people that came in and ordered a bunch of food, and were bitching at him. It's like causing all sorts of problems. So he spit in that person's face, and then that person spit back in his face, and almost started a fight, but then the manager stepped in between them. And I can't remember exactly what happened with this other instance, but there was another instance where his boss basically tried to start shit with him, and he warned him not to fuck with him again. So anyway, back to the main part of the story. I'm driving with him in his car. I can't remember where, but it was before he had to go to work. And was riding in his car, and he was listening to this song, talking about how it made him want to kick his boss's ass. Now, after that, I went to work later that day, and when I come home, I actually find out that something had happened at work that same day with that same boss he was bitching about. So he had gone into work and was, you know, sick of being there all the time and shit, and was getting bitched at a lot, and I honestly think his boss was probably looking for a fight. I honestly think his boss was looking for a fight, but anyway, So he goes in, he drops this box of fries, and his boss accuses him of throwing it and tells him he's fired. And he's like, well, let me use the phone to call the main manager because, you know, you're not the actual boss, you're just a manager. And he refused to let him use the phone. So he goes and he wants to use the phone and he won't let him. So his boss goes, what you gonna do? And like thrusts at him, like obviously trying to start shit, right? So he goes and he just starts pounding the shit out of his face. It took a few people to pull him off of him, and he had fucked up his face. Like his nose was all fucked up, and he had to go to surgery and get it fixed. And then my friend here, Machete, he was supposed to spend 4 days in jail. Only ended up spending 3 days in because of overpopulation in there, and had to pay a fine. But his little bitch of a boss was really nice to everyone after that. And I remember I had to actually go pick up some stuff from that other McDonald's one time, and because you know, sometimes they have to transfer goods back and forth to help another location that is out of something that the other has a surplus of, or something along those lines, you know, transfer products. So I went there to pick up, I believe it was syrups for the iced coffee, if I remember correctly. And he, like, was super nice to me, because I think he recognized me, honestly. And he kept calling me, oh, my friend, oh, okay, good to see you, okay, thank you. Like, he was super fucking ass-kissy, right? Like, he totally... And apparently he was really nice to everyone after that, because he was a dick before, but I don't think he wanted to get his ass beat again. And I remember he cried his ass off at the court trial. I wasn't there myself, but I was told about it. But yeah, so that's about it. That is the story of beating up the boss. It didn't really have anything to do with me. I wasn't there, but I heard about it, and frankly, I will get back to my personal stories in the next episode, but hopefully this was enjoyable, and of course, if you like the video, give it a like. If you have suggestions for future videos, I will always accept them. I might not always do them, but I always appreciate them. But yeah, have a spadoinkle day. Okay, that's enough of that. You are watching Fugitive Red Eye, and it has been way too long since I've done an episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. So today I thought I would talk about, not necessarily one specific incident, but several general shenanigans sort of things that happened around, work. Now, as I mentioned, I got away with quite a lot of shit there. Stuff that normally would have got someone fired. I already gave the example of when we graffitied the freezer in the back. Another thing we did is we put ketchup in the coffee machine. Another thing was I used to stuff receipt paper into the air conditioning or the fan. I eventually stopped because one of my coworkers had to take it apart and fix it, and I felt bad, so I didn't do it anymore. And you know those Minion Despicable Me toys that they did a couple years ago? When Despicable Me 2 came out? Or no, it was the Minion movie. But they had those Minion toys, and I apologize if my breathing is a little unbearable. I've allergies, etc. But anyway, as I was saying, those Minion toys, right? They talk when you move them. So, or when you make noise near them, or clap your hands next to them, or anything like that. So, I turned on every single one in the entire restaurant, so anytime anyone walked past the Happy Meal cart, they would all start going off and setting each other off. It was funny as hell. My boss asked me about it. She's like, why did you turn on all the Minions? I'm like, I thought it'd be funny. She just left it at that. Then there was another instance where we were having an inspection the next day, and I threw away all of the, we had these script things for the drive-thru that tell you what you're supposed to say. I tore them all down and threw them away. My boss, she didn't fucking care. She just... Well, she did care. She yelled at this one girl who saw me do it because she didn't do anything to stop me. It's like, what? I come in, and she says to me, I know you took down all those drive-thru scripts. I'm like, oh yeah? What are you gonna do about it? She's like, nothing, I just know you did it. Or there was the time that I came in late, and they asked why I was late, and I simply said I wasn't properly motivated to be there on time. Another good example of things that I used to do was mess around with the customers in the drive-thru. A lot of it seems kind of stupid now, but it was fun at the time. And that place made me do crazy things, like dance around and grab myself and make that noise Michael Jackson did when he did it. But anyway... with the customers, a lot of the times I would. It started out it was an inside joke. We used to call everyone who came through Andrew Noble as a reference to something else. Again, it's a very inside joke, so it'd be kind of difficult to explain, but it wasn't very funny. But it then evolved into us saying really random, stupid shit like, those fries are freedom fries, or... would you like to try our tomato bisque soup? Or we'd be like, welcome to McDonald's, our special today is the tomato bisque soup. And then when they'd ask, really? I'd be like, no, we don't have tomato bisque soup, or specials. It wasn't funny, but like I said, that place made me do crazy things. Also, I remember one lady I was messing around with, she worked at Arby's or something, and she's like, oh, if you worked for me, I would have fired you. I just ignored her. There was another lady, one time, who was, like, really a total bitch. Like, she tried to cut in front of people in line in the drive-thru. She was honking her horn and shouting and being a total bitch. And she came up to my window, and after I gave her food, she's like, I'm going to talk to your supervisors about this. I'm like, you do that. And I slammed the window in her face. Again, no consequences ever came for any actions I did in that place, but that's the only reason I kept the job, honestly. If they would have started enforcing policies, I would have quit a hell of a lot sooner than I did. Fight. In fact, it's a good thing I quit when I did, because they were starting to get stricter on certain things. Like, for instance, our old supervisor got fired, I think partially because of how much shit he let us get away with, but I'm not entirely sure. But that being said, I didn't mind it. McDonald's, it was by far the worst of the 4 jobs I've had. Anyway, another thing I used to do, I believe I already mentioned receipt ball, where I'd get receipts wet and throw them at stuff, leaving big white smudges everywhere. If not, I used to do that, especially on days when I knew we were having an inspection the next day, just to piss off my managers. Another thing I used to do is just write a bunch of stuff on receipts, but that wasn't really anything. I know I could take longer breaks and they wouldn't say shit to me, but they'd bitch at anyone else who took like a 1 minute longer break, and I'd be gone for like 10 extra minutes and they wouldn't say shit to me. Or how they'd send me out to get stuff from other locations and I'd stop and get lunch along the way and shit and just sit and wait in my car for about 20 minutes. Again, I was never like more than, like, I think the latest I ever came back was like after 45 minutes, and it was kind of a far drive anyway, so that was a factor. Like I said, I wasn't a dick about it, but they let me get away with a lot there, so I used that to my advantage by far. I remember my manager actually trusted me. I mean, good reason. I was a good-hearted person and shit. I mean, one time this guy accidentally gave me $80 instead of $5, so I turned it in, and eventually when the guy didn't come back, they let me keep it. But anyway, lots of stuff has happened there. I do miss getting away with anything there. Like I said, I've shown up 2 hours late before, and I didn't even get in trouble for that, or I would go several days sometimes where I just wouldn't show up. Like, I remember one Christmas Eve I didn't show up, because fuck that, I'm not working on Christmas Eve. And my manager's like, where were you Christmas Eve? I'm like, oh shit, was I supposed to work? And that, that was always my excuse, and it always worked. I mean, eventually you'd think they would have caught on. I mean, I did get written up once, but that was because I missed, like, 4 days in a row. Other people have been fired for that, so I don't know. I got away with a lot there, and I miss that aspect of it. I don't get away with nearly as much at the job I work now, partially because that's all over the phone and all the calls are monitored, so I'm a lot more careful there, especially since there they actually enforce that sort of thing. But McDonald's was a much worse job, so getting through the day required me to kind of tune out and let myself go temporarily insane. But I think that about does it for this episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. Of course, I do plan on doing more of these. It's just I've been doing other videos, so I took a little bit of a break in the middle there. But if you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like, and if you have any suggestions for future videos, I'm always open, and that's about it. You guys have a spectacular day, and I will see you next time. Tune in again. Turkey. You are watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and again I'm doing another episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru, the series where I talk about my many exploits and quote-unquote adventures in the fast food industry. Today's topic, I will be talking about multiple interesting customers who used to come through frequently. You'd get your smoky, juicy guys, like the first episode mentioned that I did a while back. You'll get your guys that, like the 6 or 7 old guys that all come in every morning to get their coffee. And then you get the people who get really mad over everything. Like one guy came in this one time because he didn't get a straw when he came to the drive-thru, and he starts shouting. This is at my manager, who we call Rimmer. He comes in and he looks at Rimmer and he's like, "Do you know why I fucking go through the drive-thru? So I don't have to come in here. Give me a straw for my goddamn drink." The funniest thing ever, because it's this big, buff biker-looking dude, right? Like the cliched Harley rider guys. He comes in, starts shouting at him, and of course my manager Rimmer's just like, "Okay," he gives him a straw. It was pretty fucking funny. I don't know why people get so mad over stupid shit, but I think probably one of the most interesting guys was the man we simply call the hand hug guy. We always called him that because every time he would come through, he would order a large drink, a large fry, and a large hug. Like, he would literally ask for a large hug, and anytime he'd pull up to a female, he'd be like, "Hello, gorgeous," and he'd give every fucking person like, this weird nickname. Like, he called me Kingfish. I don't get it. Whatever. But, like, he'd grab your hand, right, and he'd hold it. Just kind of hold your hand for about 5 seconds when you give him his food. "There's your hug for today, Kingfish." Really weird fucking guy, and he always had his wife with him, and he was always hitting on the women who worked there. He was just a bizarre dude. I mean, honestly, I don't know what the hell was his deal, but then one day he just kind of stopped coming. I mean, he was kind of an older guy, so I don't know if he had any health issues or anything. I hope to God not, because that'd be kind of morbid, but one day he just stopped showing up, and, you know, honestly, it kind of sucked, because that guy was entertaining as fuck. Other customers you'd get is there's this family that they would all come through and order drinks at different times of the day. They usually would drive the same car, but sometimes you'd see the same guy come through like 8 times with a different car each time. It was really weird. Then there was this one guy with this little like Teletubby hairdo, like he just had one little strand of hair that came up and kind of made like a hook shape. And all he ever ordered was milk. Like, that's it. Just a little jug of milk every time he came through. That was it. It's like he lived on the stuff and nothing else. But, yeah, we had a lot of strange customers. Obviously, there were the stoners and the drunks that come in when you work the late shift. There was one guy that came through, and he told me I need to tell all the people behind him that they're up past their bedtime or some weird shit like that. Then there was this lady from, like, Arby's who said that if you worked for me, I would have fired your ass. And, you know, then you get those people that just bitch and bitch and bitch, and there's a lot of them. But there's also a lot of really interesting ones. Like this one time this guy comes through, right? And he's like, and I'm like, order when you're ready, right? And he's like, "I will have like he went on for like fucking 5 minutes doing that. Like, I'm not even really exaggerating by that much. He just kept doing that over and over and over again. And eventually he did order some food, and when he said fries, he said it like this, like, "And I want a large order of fries! Fries!" Like, I think he was just doing it to fuck with me, but honestly, it was really weird, because he was this guy in, like, his 50s. It was really fucking bizarre. And then there was this other time that this group of teenagers drove backwards through the drive-thru just to get 4 waters. I don't know, they thought they were funnier than they really were, but whatever. I mean, I've done some stupid shit too, especially when I worked there, but I don't know, I thought that was pretty dumb. I remember, like I said, I used to mess with the customers. I remember one thing I used to say was I used to take the line from Red Dwarf, you know, Taki Toaster. I used to say, "Howdy doodly doo, Taki's the name, toasting's the game. Would anyone like a toast?" There was these 2 chicks that always got a kick out of it, so I always did it when they came through. I don't know, there was this one lady that had, like, leprosy, and she came through, and every time I took her money, I was so grossed out. Oh, I remember, it was, oh, fuck. She didn't come through that much, but it was really nasty when she did. because I was always afraid I would catch the stuff. And then you'd also see, like, this old lady with a mustache that would come through every once in a while. She was a sweet old lady, but she had a mustache. But that's about it for today's episode, and you have a fantastic day. You are watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and this is yet another installment of Tales from the Drive-Thru. Tales from the Drive-Thru is the series in which I talk about my many, many interesting experiences working in the fast food industry. As the title would indicate, today's episode is about my co-workers, and just how interesting some of them were. We'll start out with a grill guy who worked in the morning. Big guy. I'd say probably like 500-600 pounds, easy. Really tall, pretty muscular, also kind of overweight. He was a Colombian gentleman. We'll refer to him as Tito Dickman Baby, but Dickman for short. I'm sure some of you probably get that reference if people are actually watching this. But anyway, Dickman was a funny guy. He hardly spoke any English, and yet he was very graphic. Like, what I could understand was absolutely disgusting. And he's like 50, 60 years old, mind you. He's an older guy, and he has like a ton of health problems too. But he's a very fun guy. I mean, you wouldn't expect a man of his age to be so vulgar, but he was. It was hilarious. I remember there was a time, first off, he had this on-running joke where he'd tell me to do his job for him, essentially. He'd like, Agnolo, please you sweep and mop. That was his job, obviously. Or he'd be like, you sweep and mop, and then he made a masturbatory hand signal, you know, moving his hand up and down. And I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, ¿Cómo se dice en inglés? En español es masturbation. And then he'd also commonly say shit like, you good boy, man. The problem is too much masturbation. Fucking hilarious guy. I mean, he was absolutely abhorrent in some of the shit he said, especially to the female coworkers. But he was a funny guy, and then one day he went on vacation and then just didn't come back. I hope he's okay. Dickman, if you're out there, I wish you the best. But that's about all about him. There was also another, there was this gentleman that was, I called him the General, actually. That's a nickname I actually gave him at work. He was the rudest to the customers out of anyone I've ever seen, and I actually thought that was his best quality, actually. I remember he would frequently tell people, I can't remember his exact wording, but I remember he would get in trouble for talking back to the customers on a regular basis. And whenever the managers would talk to him, he'd talk right back to them. And he wouldn't get written up, because, again, they needed people. They were super desperate. He was fucking great, dude. Like, General, if you're somehow watching this, man, it was a pleasure to work with you for those, for the time that I did, anyway. But, I don't really know much else to say about him. He was a funny guy. There was another guy, worked the night shift. Total fucking pothead, you could tell. We'll call him Cheech. He used to go out to the dumpster to smoke weed, and pretend he was taking out the garbage. Especially when Diego, the manager I spoke about in an earlier episode, would take over, because he would just be like, oh, I'm supposed to take out the garbage at night. He would lie to him because Diego was new there. And he'd go out and he'd smoke weed. He did eventually get caught, but yeah. Then there was, let's see what else. There was, like, on the night shift, it was loaded with ex-cons. It was kind of interesting, because McDonald's, they'll hire anyone. Like, if you're an ex-convict and you're looking for a job, McDonald's is probably going to hire you. Just saying. I wouldn't recommend it because it's a shit job, but if you can't get any other work, you might want to give it a shot. But there was probably should have scripted this, but I don't script my videos. There was the original morning shift were probably my favorite to work with, but a lot of them ended up quitting. There was one guy who I'm not sure if he was actually bisexual or if he just liked to joke around. I would believe either. He was always trying to fuck one of the managers there, too. But I don't really know what else to say about my coworkers, so I guess that does it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and I'm back at it with another episode of, Tales from the Drive-Thru. That's what this is. But yeah, this is a series that I keep forgetting to make episodes of, and, obviously there's only so many stories I have, but I've still got plenty of stories, so once again, Tales from the Drive-Thru is the series where I just kind of blabber on about my experiences working in the fast food industry. Today's topic, I will be talking about the most disgusting aspects of the job, things that I encountered that were pretty gross or otherwise disturbing, so that being said, this might be disgusting. So first off, I'd like to talk about the time I went into the McDonald's bathroom and there was this huge piece of shit, literally, that someone left in the toilet. Absolutely nasty, and when I tried to flush it, it didn't go down. They had to have the maintenance guys come in and snake it out. I bet you won't get that image out of your head for a while. Also, I remember one time I went into the bathroom after one of my coworkers, and, I'm pretty sure he had just jacked off, because it looked like there was semen in the toilet, so there's another great image for your head. This episode's gonna be disgusting, and I apologize for that, but there's another thing. There was this lady that used to come through the drive-thru all the time that had leprosy, very clearly had leprosy. Her skin was disgusting, and, I have nothing against, the person herself, but I'm pretty sure that has a treatment these days, so lady... I had to wash my hands multiple times after taking her money. It was gross. On a lighter note, I forgot what I was going to say, actually, so I guess it can't be that important. But, sometimes the mop sink would fill up and get flooded. I remember we actually almost once didn't pass health inspection because of it, because it was starting to grow mold. Green mold, not black mold, so it wasn't anything toxic or anything like that. They did end up cleaning it up, as I recall, but it's pretty gross. Also, something that's not as nasty as the disgusting bits I've mentioned so far, but one thing that, on a personal level, really used to gross me out. It used to, anytime that I would make a caramel iced coffee, there was this syrup that you made with it that was absolutely disgusting in smell. Now, I used to like caramel like a whole lot, and I still do to an extent, but after that, I was turned off caramel for a very long time. Because if you get that syrup on your shirt, and you have to smell it all day, it's awful. It is just absolutely awful. And they made those dehydrated onions that they rehydrate to put on the burgers? Well, they would actually rehydrate that in the same sink they wash the dishes in. So that's pretty gross, too, and they smelled really bad, too. Like, when they rehydrate them, I almost vomited. It was awful. They would do it every morning at about 5 or 6 o'clock. Now, of course, there was other things that were also pretty gross there. Trying to think of a few others, because there was a lot of things I did not like there that were really nasty. But, the dehydrated onions were definitely one of the worst. Also, when they'd make the Egg McMuffins, when they'd, they put the eggs in this little round thing, that would, cook them. I remember, though, some of the grill ladies, I remember I washed them one time, and there was still a little bit of egg left on some of the things, and I was cleaning it, and it still wasn't coming off. And one of the grill ladies comes up to me, and she's like, "It's good enough." I'm like, "There's some of yesterday's eggs on there. You're telling me that's clean enough for the McMuffins?" And I'm sorry if I've ruined McMuffins for you, duty, but, there you go. Because I know you're probably one of the only people watching this, but yeah, it was pretty gross. I can't say that it was absolutely every location, and I don't know. I do remember some of the grill people did end up managing to get it cleaner later, but at a different date, but, I can't guarantee anything, obviously, because I don't work at every location, but that was nasty. Also, the garbage cans out in the lobby were fucking disgusting when you had to take them out to the dumpster. I remember I got some garbage juice on my shirt once from it, because I was filling in for the maintenance guy once, because there was no maintenance guy there, and they're like, "Hey, can you fill in for the maintenance guy today?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why the fuck not?" So, they had me doing the maintenance stuff, and my uniform got covered in garbage juice, and I'm like, "I'm not wearing this shit." So they went to get me a spare shirt from the office, but all they had left was a manager shirt. So they put I was wearing a manager shirt, even though I wasn't a manager. I actually turned down being a manager, which is another story for another day, unless I've already told it. I can't remember. But you know what? I will tell it later on. I don't think I have. I'll double check the other episodes. But yeah, this has been Tales from the Drive-Thru, and you guys have a great rest of the day. You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and this is another exciting episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. Today's episode is a little bit different. Normally, Tales from the Drive-Thru is about my own experience working in the fast food industry. However, today's will actually be about my experience as a customer. It actually happened last night, as Snowman, Senior Grapist, and I went to Del Taco to get some dessert. So we go to Del Taco, and we order our desserts. We ordered quite a bit of stuff. There was the three of us, and yeah. So we ordered when we first pull up to the drive-thru, I hear the guy on the, this is word for word what he says, okay, on the what do you call it, the drive-thru speaker. He says to me, thank you for choosing Del Taco. Would you like to try our, whatever burrito today? He literally said, whatever. And I'm like, no thanks. He's like, what can I get for you? And I'm like, can we get 4 orders of the caramel cheesecake bites, right? And he's like, so you want 4 orders of the caramel cheese, whatever you said? I'm like, yeah. Like, he literally was like, whatever you said. And I'm like, what the fuck? So we pull up, and it's just this old guy in like his 50s, and I'm like, what the hell? He's just so apathetic there. Senior Grapist, of course, said that the guy probably, like, owned the place and someone didn't come in or something, and he was really pissed off. But damn, was this guy apathetic. It was fucking great. Probably my new favorite person to have dealt with as a customer, just because how he just didn't fucking care. So then, after that, we left, and that was pretty much the end of that story. Now, this next story, because I'm kind of combining 2 stories here, is another experience we had with customer service. This one is cheating because it was at an Olive Garden, not at a drive-thru. But this guy's just so worth mentioning that I think it's absolutely necessary. So we went to Olive Garden, and we get this waiter, I mean. I'll call him Jimmy. So Jimmy comes up to us, and he's like, he takes our orders, and you can tell because of the blank face he has, he's just not all there in the head. And we order our food, and we eat it, you know, pretty normal stuff. Another server comes up and takes the bowls away from us, our soup bowls, when we're finished with it. Of course, Jimmy comes back up and says, where did your soup bowls go? I'm like, the other lady took it. He's like, oh!
Wow, what a butt kicking.
So then after that, when we're leaving, I got a box, right? And at Olive Garden, they don't let you put your own food in the bags.
Get down there and finish them off. I will protect
So
you.
he bags it up, and he grabs one of the bags, and he's like, oh no, this one's broken. I gotta get a new bag. And he puts that one down on the table and walks off into the kitchen. I pick up the bag he's talking about. There is nothing wrong with it. No tears, it's not dirty. I don't know what the fuck this guy's on about.
Sir douchebag, up here.
So he comes back up, and he rolls up the food in the bags, and he rolls it really, really ridiculously low so that you can hardly even grab the damn thing. It's pretty funny. But yeah, that was interesting, too.
Hey,
Yeah, we've had a lot of very strange experiences. Another time, when Super Dantastic and I went to Sizzler, there was this lady who acted like she knew us. She's like, oh, you're here all the time! Oh yeah, you're here, like, she's fucking crazy, like, thinking that I'm there all the time when I hadn't been to that Sizzler in like 6 months, and she's like, oh, you were here last week, right? I'm like, no. And, so I order my food, and I go to sit down at the table. Super Dantastic orders his, and he says he wants the exact same thing I have, and, she makes him repeat everything, even though he said he literally wants the exact same thing I did. But he repeats everything to her, right? And then after he has to repeat every single thing, she's like, see, I remembered. It's like, no, you didn't, bitch. He had to repeat everything to you. What the hell are you talking about? But yeah, some of the people that work in the food service industry, man, they're fucking interesting. I mean, I myself was a fairly interesting guy, but these people are probably my favorites to have dealt with. Yeah, other than that, there's not much else to say really about these other employees. You know, I've had my own share of shenanigans and apathy, but damn, that Del Taco guy last night, he was something else. That was fucking great.
By the hammer of fetish!
But, yeah, this has been another episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. Again, I'm Fugitive Red-Eye. I'll see you next time for more drive-thru shenanigans, and, if you guys enjoyed, let me know, and, you guys have a fantastic day. You are watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another exciting episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. Tales from the Drive-Thru, of course, being the series where I talk about my many exploits and adventures in the fast food industry. Today I go back to the traditional episode after the last episode being somewhat of a different format. I'm going back to my own personal stories working in fast food. So, I went back and watched some of the previous episodes to make sure I hadn't already done this story, which, as far as I can tell, I haven't, which I'm surprised I haven't, because it's actually a very funny story. It's another interesting customer. Basically, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I used to mess with the customers when I'd take their order. And I would say this was about maybe a year and a half ago. I had just seen The Room for the very first time, you know, the Tommy Wiseau movie. Awful movie, but that's kind of the point of watching it. Anyway, so I had just seen The Room, and there's the famous scene on the rooftops, where if you don't know, where he says, "Oh, hi, Mark," which I found fucking hysterical. So, when someone pulled up to the drive-thru, I said, "Oh, hi, Mark," instead of, you know, "Order when you're ready," or "Welcome to McDonald's, can I take your order?" Some shit like that. I'm just like, "Oh, hi, Mark." This guy's reaction was the most unnatural reaction ever to that. He gets super fucking hostile. He's like, "Well, who's that then?" I'm like, "I'm sorry?" He's like, "Why'd you call me Mark?" I'm like, "What can I get for you today, sir?" He's like, "You shouldn't just call people Mark. How do you know I don't have a friend named Mark or something?" And I'm like, "What? Can I help you, sir?" And he's like, "I want to talk to your manager." I'm like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm serious." It's like, dude, I just said, "Oh, hi, Mark. How is that offensive?" It's like, whatever. So I got my manager, and of course, it's the crazy one from the I Cannot Serve You episode. I forget what I called him in that. I think I called him Diego. We'll call him that again. He goes by, so he comes up and he's like, no, it wasn't him. It wasn't him, actually. It was a different manager that was also pretty funny. One who worked the night shift, an older Hispanic lady. And she was like, okay, sorry, sir, okay. And then she talks to me, she's like, "He crazy." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, I don't know what's wrong with him." She said, and she's like, you call him Mark." I'm like, "Okay." She's like, "Crazy people." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know." But, yeah, it was fucking weird, dude. Like, I don't know why someone would get that butthurt over me calling him Mark. Unless he had, like, a friend that just recently passed away named Mark or something like that. But even then, that's just ridiculous. I mean, it's fucking weird that he would fucking do that. Oh, and I remember he, like, part of the stuff he was bitching about is like, "Do you know my personal life? You want to try and get into my personal business?" I'm like, no. It's like, dude. And I even told him it was a reference to a movie, and he got, like, super fucking butthurt still. I don't know what the hell was wrong with this guy, but it was something else. But, yeah. I guess that about does it for this story. I don't really know what else to say about it. It was just one interaction with one really butthurt customer. It reminds me kind of the straw guy I talked about before, and the smoky juicy guy from the first episode. But it's like, this was even less of a reason to get so fucking salty, but whatever. It was something else, and I honestly think that probably one of the more irritable customers I've ever dealt with. And, you know, it's because of people like that that I myself hate being a bitchy customer, because I know what it's like. And I hate it when you get a bitchy customer like that, and they're just so pissed off for no explicit reason. But I think that about wraps it up for today's episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. What did you guys think? Anyone have any suggestions? Of course, I'm always open. If you liked it, let me know. If you didn't, let me know, etc., etc. And if you guys have a great day, then that would be fantastic. And yeah, I think that does it. I'm just kind of rambling on at this point. So you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time with more stories and other stuff that I decide to do. You are watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another exciting episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru, the series where I discuss my exploits and adventures, if you want to call them that, in fast food working. Today's episode, I will be talking about people who annoyed me at work. I'm going to start off with a group of customers that would come in every Saturday night from about midnight to 3 a.m. They would all sit down, they'd bring in their TV, believe it or not, and they'd hook it up to the wall with their Xbox 360, and they'd be playing that all night. Now, there was about 8 of them. 2 of them would play the Xbox, while the other 6 would sit around playing, I think it was Magic the Gathering or something, some form of card game like that. And they would always make this really huge, disgusting mess. One thing that I really liked about my neurotic manager, who I refer to as Rimmer in this series, is he would often throw them out and tell them not to come back, but they always fucking did, and they always left a horrible mess. Not to mention they smelled really bad. They were a bunch of kids, probably in their late teens, probably around 18, 19 each, which was around the age I was at the time, too. So, but they were just disgusting. You could tell they were just total fucking disgusting, unhygienic people who just didn't shower and didn't go outside much. Now, granted, I don't go outside a whole lot anymore. I'm kind of an indoorsy guy. I still go outside and go on walks from time to time, but these guys, I don't think they knew what the word outside meant other than to drive to McDonald's so they could hang out. Another person that pissed me off is this couple, okay? They'd come through, and the husband was this really big guy on an oxygen tank, and the wife was this little petite lady. And the wife was always super, super sweet and super nice, whereas the husband would always be shouting and being an asshole to everyone. He would constantly, bitch and complain and be a total asshole, and she's just there, no, honey, calm down, calm down. Total asshole. Fucking hated that guy. More people that pissed me off were some of the hypocritical managers, They'd bitch at me for being late, which most of them didn't after a while because they knew I didn't care. But when I first started there, they'd bitch at me for being late, and then they'd be late, so I would call them out on it every single fucking time. And I think that's part of the reason they stopped bitching at me to be late. But it really pissed me off. I also didn't really like corporate. They always had, we would always put up a farce to act like we did everything by the book when corporate was there, which we didn't when they weren't, obviously. I mean, aside from important things like hygiene and stuff, which we did follow to a T because, that's the law, at least for the most part, there was so many things that we just didn't do when corporate wasn't there, just watching our ass. Now, I myself would put up the farce originally when I started there, but eventually I stopped giving a fuck and just would leave my shirt untucked. I would fucking do what I wanted. I would sit there drinking a large drink because they wanted us to drink small drinks and when we got our free drinks or whatever. But I always drank the large ones, and they were okay with it. But when corporate was there, they always had us do the small ones, but I would always drink the large ones. They also didn't like us having drink or food at the register. Of course, they didn't always enforce it when corporate wasn't there. Like I said, it depended on who was the manager, too, because there was all sorts of horrible double standards. Different people got away with different things. Myself, I got away with a lot, whereas new people got away with almost nothing. But yeah, I did not like the corporate people when they came in, and I stopped putting up a farce. And one of the corporate guys, I think, stopped caring what I did. But then he eventually got fired or quit. I'm not entirely sure what the story was, but I'm thinking it might have been because he was too lenient. Just like there used to be a manager there who got fired or quit. I can't remember which, but again, because she was too lenient. And I knew what I could get away with which manager, because obviously different ones were stricter. Most of them let me get away with pretty much anything, but I knew what I could say and what I could do around specific managers. But anyway, make a long story short, there was just a lot of people that really pissed me off. Customers in particular, but management definitely pissed me off as well. So I guess this is about it for this episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. You are watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. Today will be different because I'll be talking about my time volunteering as kitchen staff, rather than my time working in fast food. I did this a total of 3 times, twice at summer camp and once at winter camp. The first time was a lot more fun, because it was family camp where my parents and my brothers and I were all at the camp, and we were all doing that together. So that first time, pretty simple. All we did was the kitchen staff, and we also went to go do activities like swimming and arts and crafts and all sorts of shit, summer camp stuff. The second time was at winter camp. This one wasn't family camp. It was my first time going alone, although Super Dantastic was also there with me volunteering because we both went. He wasn't with me the first time at family camp, but he went with me the other 2 times. So anyway, at the winter camp, it was also really fun, because we also went skiing in between our working at the kitchen. However, the worst time, which is the one I'm going to primarily be talking about, is the one that we did finally, the second time I did it for summer camp. This was probably my least favorite time I have ever done any work, other than sometimes at McDonald's. So to start with, I didn't really get a chance to do many of the activities because I was constantly having to work in the kitchen, which, I did it the other 2 times, but at least those other 2 times I went and did some activities. Granted, I think I did take archery once during that second summer camp run, but you had to sign up for it, whereas at the other ones you didn't. Part of what made this one so unbearable is I realized that the lady who runs the kitchen is kinda sexist. She lets the women get away with doing hardly anything and leaving us men to do all the work, which is ironic because it's usually the other way around, you would think, with the way things are perpetuated. But no, this lady let the women just go off and do whatever, while Super Dantastic, myself, and the 2 other gentlemen working there had to do all the work. I shit you not, one bitch was gone for like an hour, came back, and not to mention, the lady who worked the kitchen was hardly there. So, one time while she was gone, the 2 bitches were gone for like several hours, leaving me, Super Dantastic, and the other guys to do all the work. They had just barely come back, sat down, and she was sitting down, looking all upset, and the lady who runs the kitchen comes in and says, "Do you need a break?" And the chick's like, "Yeah," and I sit down for a second, and she tells me not to sit down. So I left. I was like, fuck that. I went off and just sat and didn't do any work for a few hours because I was pissed. That bitch is gonna tell me not to fucking sit down when that other bitch gets a break after being gone for several hours, coming and working for 5 minutes and then taking a seat. Not to mention the girls never fucking woke up on time. And when we didn't the one time we didn't wake up on time, we got bitched at. But all the times they did, no problem, it's fine, they're girls. It was bullshit. And, don't get me wrong, the lady who worked the kitchen was a nice lady, but she let those girls do basically nothing and make us do everything, which, again, by stereotypes, you would think it'd be the other way around. But regardless, I felt that it was unfair that we had to all do, all the men had to do all the work at that fucking camp. It was fucking awful. Not to mention, I didn't do any activities, and I just got angrier and angrier, because the fucking campers were so ungrateful that time around, too. They treated you like shit, and they took everything you did for granted. There was a couple of genuinely nice ones that I was super happy to fucking see every now and then, but there was a lot that were just such assholes. And they'd be like, "Oh, well, what took the food so long?" Well, you know what, motherfucker? There's 3 of us working on it, and it's a camp with over 100 people. Why don't you get your ass in the kitchen if you're in such a rush? Anyway, after all of this, I haven't been to summer camp since. I was just turned off the whole ordeal from this. Which, also working at McDonald's didn't help because it was a similar experience, but at least at McDonald's I was getting paid for it. And at McDonald's I could get away with a hell of a lot more. But anyway, I think that about does it for today's episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. I know it's been a while since I've done these. I hope you've enjoyed it, and you have a great rest of the day. You are watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another exciting episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. If you're new, Tales from the Drive-Thru is the series where I talk about my experiences working in the fast food industry. Today's episode, I will be talking about the time I got Dozer Mac a job at the same fast food restaurant I worked at. I was gonna have him tell this story himself, but he's an unreliable person. And we have very contradictory schedules, so I'm just gonna record it and say what I remember. So Dozer Mac needed a job, so I referred him to my manager, and the manager hired him. However, while he was there, he was not exactly the model employee. He was frequently late for work, on a couple of occasions over 6 hours late. He took way too many breaks. You're only supposed to get one break that's 10 minutes long and one break that's 30 minutes long. But he would take about 50 fucking breaks. And that's not even really an exaggeration. Like, every 20 minutes, he would have to take a break to go smoke. Funny thing is there was a couple of the employees that were uncomfortable around him for some reason, and they didn't know that I knew him, so they were talking about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, what's so wrong? And they're like, I don't know, there's just something off about him. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, there was a couple of employees that didn't like him. There was a few that did too, but anyway, there's a training video we would watch about fries, and one of the things it said is, do not break the fries. Well, one day I came in, and Dozer Mac was filling the fry hopper, and he's sitting there with the bucket of fries, snapping them in half, saying over and over again, do not break the fries. Do not break the fries. It was the funniest shit ever. He didn't get along with the manager, Rimmer, who I've mentioned in previous episodes. Rimmer did not like him in the slightest. There were also several days where he just didn't show up at all. I mean, 6 hours late wasn't bad enough, he just didn't show up for quite a few days. And of course, there was just excuse after excuse after excuse, all of which were total bullshit and were very contradictory in some cases. Dozer Mac wasn't the only friend I got a job. I also got another friend a job. We'll call him Jimmy. And Jimmy was a friend I'd known since elementary school, but he needed a job as well, so I got him a job. This was actually after Dozer Mac had quit working there because he just kind of stopped showing up. But Jimmy can't drive, he doesn't have a license, and he doesn't have a car. And he lives quite far from the place. So, he was kind of staying with me in my front room on the couch for about a month while he worked there, because he only worked there about a month. We had opposite shifts. For instance, my shift was 4 a.m. to 12 p.m., at least around that time. My shifts were inconsistent, but that's what my shift was during the time he was working there. Sometimes he'd go in with me at 4 in the morning, and his shift wouldn't start until 1. So he'd wait in the lobby, just drinking coffee after coffee after coffee for 9 hours, waiting for someone to tell him he can clock in early, or wait until his shift officially started. At the time, I had my iPod Touch, which I always took to work with me, because I was constantly using it to watch videos on YouTube and stuff when I worked the register in the back. Even though it was against policy, I didn't fucking care, and nobody said shit to me about it. But since Jimmy was out in the lobby for hours on end, I'd let him use my iPod Touch. At this time, he didn't have a cell phone either. He does now, but he didn't back then. So I would let him use my iPod Touch, and he'd just sit out there watching YouTube videos and using the text app to text people back and forth with it. Of course, this was something that was very stressful. When you're around someone for a long period of time, even if you're good friends, you can start to get frustrated and angry at them. And that happened with Jimmy. The thing is I got really irritated a lot of the times having to take him to and from work, even on days I didn't work. And sometimes I would drop him off, and he would just get off early, and then would tell me that he wants me to come pick him up, and I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? I'd be mad, but then I'd go do it, and then he'd be like, oh no, my mom's coming to pick me up. I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? Why did you not tell me that? Again, I hold nothing against him for this to this day, but at the time, that was fucking frustrating. But of course, that's all water under the bridge now. But anyway, what really sucked for him was when he got fired. Rather, he didn't get fired, he transferred to another location, but the thing is because I was no longer willing to drive him because I had become pissed off at all this constant back and forth, he decided to take the bus to and from work. And he became absent quite frequently, and late quite frequently as well. One day he came in, and there was this manager there who told him, no, we don't need you, go home. We've already replaced you for this shift. It's like, bitch, why the hell did you not tell him that beforehand? You have his home number. And you could have told me, and I could have relayed it to him. But no, he comes out there, and she just sends him back home on the bus that he just came fucking 20 miles or so to get there. It was bullshit, and I feel bad for him for it. But anyway, those are when I got my friends their jobs. Dozer Mac and Jimmy, as we called it. Those were the only 2 times I referred anyone to a job there, simply because working with my friends was fun and all, but at the same time, I didn't wish it upon them because I had gotten so sick of the job. After those 2, I decided no longer to refer anyone. Not to mention with those 2 becoming frequently absent, and one transferring and one just quit showing up altogether, I felt that it wasn't a good reputation for me to keep referring people if this kind of shit was going to happen with the kind of friends I have. But anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. I'll see you for the next one. You're watching Fugitive Red Eye, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. If you're new, Tales from the Drive-Thru is the series where I talk about my experiences working in the fast food industry. Today I'm going to talk about why I quit. Now really there were several reasons why I quit. Obviously the environment of the job was very draining on you. The work itself was rather easy, but it was also very tedious. Also, they would schedule me some nights from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m., and then schedule me to come back at like 7 a.m. the next day. Of course, whenever that happened, to be rebellious, I'd always be at least an hour late those days. They eventually did stop scheduling me those conflicting schedules because of it. And anytime I actually talked to them about it, they would make it so I didn't have to come in. But at the same time, it did piss me off that they would do it in the first place. Another reason is the corporate supervisor we had no longer worked there. I think he might have got fired for being too lenient, to be honest, but I'm not sure. And the lady we got afterward was a lot more strict on things, and she was getting progressively more and more strict on policies. So that was another reason I quit, because frankly, I didn't obey half the policies there. I obeyed the mandatory shit like, hygiene and, food handling stuff. But stupid shit like, for instance, I would take slightly longer breaks and they wouldn't say shit to me about it. Plus, depending on who was the manager at the time, sometimes I wouldn't even wear my uniform. I remember one day I actually wore just a t-shirt. So when they were getting more and more strict and, wanting you to do the whole, for instance, their drive-thru script was fucking stupid. I never followed the drive-thru script. I said whatever the fuck I wanted, and I just did it naturally. And admittedly, I was kind of a jackass. But I did not follow the drive-thru script at all, as I've mentioned in previous videos. But they were starting to get all butthurt that people weren't following the drive-thru script, and they wanted us to do their drive-thru script, which... Here's a little thing about the drive-thru script. We're just supposed to, tell people to order whenever they're ready, and then after that, we're not supposed to say another fucking thing. Now here's the thing, they were inconsistent with that. When I first started there, you weren't supposed to say shit. You were just supposed to let them finish, and then at the end, you're supposed to tell them their total, whether or not they tell you they're done. You're not supposed to ask them if you're done. You're not supposed to offer anything. You're not supposed to do anything like that. But then later on, they changed it so you're supposed to repeat the order back to them, which we weren't originally supposed to do. Also, they just kept changing things. I mean, I didn't care, because, they were changing very minuscule things that I didn't follow anyway. Not to mention the pay there was just awful. I was only getting, by the time I actually quit there, I was only getting $9 an hour. And what I feel was kind of the final nail in the coffin is the fact that, there was this new chick that had started there that was terrible. In fact, I had shouted at her plenty of times because she was terrible, and I was kind of an asshole about it. But she was getting paid more than me after she had just started, and she was terrible at her job. I knew how to do everything there, and I was even offered management, but I turned it down. Yet this new bitch is getting paid at least 25 cents an hour more than I am. And I know this because she told me. Surprisingly, when I quit, I expected them to be a lot more desperate to stop. Or rather, to stop me from quitting. But the thing is they only called me twice. And the thing is I never told them I quit. I just stopped showing up. And they called me twice, and then she texted me twice telling me to answer the phone. After that, I never heard from them again. And of course, another main reason I quit is because I did find another job. Now, that other job may not be perfect, but at least I'm getting paid more. And it's part-time, so, I'm making the same amount part-time where I am currently as I was full-time at the drive-thru. Although, to be honest, my current job isn't all that great either. It's still something I can do for the time being. Also, there were certain words that I used on a regular basis working fast food that I just couldn't stand to hear anymore. For instance, there was a specific way old people said the word cheese that just made me cringe. Not in a fucking memey, stupid way, but they literally made me wince. Then, of course, you got those people with really thick Hispanic accents that would say Coke, but it would sound like cock. They'd be like, "Can I get a large Diet Coke?" Nothing against them. I thought it was fucking hilarious, but that was funny. You know it's bad when you start having nightmares about the place you work, and I did start having nightmares about the place I work, legitly. Not to the point that some of my coworkers were, but I did still occasionally. But regardless, I just got sick of the job, and there were several things piling up that eventually I did plan to quit anyway. Also, I really fucking hated working the back register, which is what they had me do all the time after a certain point. Granted, I just sat there and watched YouTube on my iPod half the shift, but even then, I got so tired of having to cash out all those orders that it just was so taxing that was also another major contributor. But anyway, that's all I really have to say about why I quit working there. It was not the best of jobs, and if you can avoid it, I definitely recommend you don't work in fast food, just because it's much more grueling and draining on the spirit of a person. But anyway, that's been it for this episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and you have a great rest of the day.
What am I watching? I don't know, but I hate it.
Subscribe to Fiji Red Eye.